This week on the podcast, we are talking about failure, what it is, what it isn't, and is it a good thing for us? I'm Quinn.
And I'm Drew.
And this is The Year We Got Better.
Welcome back to the podcast. If you're new here, Quinn and I are on a 52-week journey to improve our holistic wellness, and we're taking you along with us.
We sure are. This is week 12 of the podcast. This is our 12th episode, and we're switching it up a little bit today. We've kind of been running through the 8 dimensions of wellness, and we're branching out. Well, we ran through them all.
Yeah, we're out of ideas, so we're going in a different direction. No, we actually planned for this. We knew that once we got through the 8 dimensions, we were going to explore some more topics in more detail. And what better topic to start with than failure? Yeah. Keeping things optimistic.
I know. And it sounds really bleak, but I think that I'm actually really excited to talk about failure because I think it kind of gets a bad rep.
I also think it touches all of the dimensions of wellness.
100%, I agree with that. So, Drew, what's your first thought to kick us off? What's your first thought when you hear the word failure?
If you mean what is my gut reaction?
Yeah, I do mean that.
I would say fear of.
Yeah.
I think it's just this inherent fear of doing something wrong or missing an opportunity and the weight that you carry with you following that experience. We're going to get into this a lot, but I think expectations and failure are so intimately connected to each other. And one discussion I would love to get into is where we get our expectations from and how we set them and how that influences if we succeed or fail when we're pursuing our goal.
I love that because I think it raises a really interesting question of like, who makes the rules, which is my favorite question to ask as an adult. Who makes the rules and what is the answer to that question if not like yourself?
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's really easy to feel influenced by societal expectations and pressures that kind of almost want to impose a certain standard on you. And then if you feel like you don't meet that standard, that can feel like a failure. But it's not really, is it?
No, I don't think so. And kind of along this train of thought, how has your view of failure evolved as you've gotten older?
I think that, okay, well, like you said, right? Failure obviously has this right off the bat really negative connotation, right? You think failure and you're like, that's a bummer. I did something wrong. Like I missed the boat on something that was really important to me, right? And it feels like monumental, right? It almost feels like a failure is something that you cannot get past.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of is like the connotation of it, and maybe was my connotation of it like growing up, right? And I definitely, Drew and I like to say, I'm like type A.5. I am for sure a perfectionist, but I also have a little bit of dash of chaos. Throw it in there. This is all to say that I definitely growing up felt huge pressure not to fail in all kinds of different areas. And I felt like I would get really down on myself when I did fail, which again, it's like who sets the standard for what success actually looks like, especially when you're younger. And I think especially when you're like a teenager, which is such a vulnerable, weird age, right? I think there is such a potential for you to feel failure because you're not living up to an expectation that is not really that important to you anyway. Have you felt that way?
About what specifically?
I guess just about like growing up and feeling the pressure not to fail.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting conversation about like, was that homegrown or were there external influences that made me feel that way?
Yeah.
I think it's probably a combination of both, but I share, I think, your experience of putting a lot of pressure on myself and then really beating myself up if I fell short. And this is kind of, you know, I've obviously failed a lot of times in my life at a lot of different things. Right? Everyone has. One thing that stands out to me, particularly in my teenage years, as you know, but our listeners may not know, I was a saxophonist growing up, like studied competitively and, you know, did all sorts of stuff. And as a part of that, I had auditioned for like Maryland All-State Band, was in it several years in a row. And going into my junior year of high school, I had met the requirements I needed one more year to be able to make kind of what's called All Eastern Band. So the entire East Coast, right? And that was the year that I did not make all-state band,
so
which was the
yeah.
requirement to be able to reach that goal. And it just totally like toppled my self-confidence, and it really made me reconsider my passion and my interest in music in general.
Right.
And looking back on it as an adult, like that was such a traumatic event for me. But it wasn't traumatic because anyone was really saying that I had failed, other than like obviously the people who said that I didn't make all-state band, like they said I failed. But the emotional effect of it was all self-imposed. No one else in my life was beating me up about it. Like not my teachers, my parents. No, like that was just me.
I think that really points to this kind of like internalizing aspect of failure that I think it's so true, right? It's like the hardest part of failing is the way you punish yourself.
Yeah.
I think. Well, and I think it kind of, I didn't really answer the question that you asked me, Drew, which was, you know, how has my view of failure changed as I've gotten older? And I'm curious your perspective on this as well. But I think that as I've grown up into an adult, into like a, you know, more like self-aware and reflective being, I think that I talk about this all the time. I think that it all goes back to values, surprise, surprise. And I am more able to set my own benchmarks for what success or failure looks like according to my values.
Yes.
Right? Like, so I'll share an example as well, I guess, of, you know, a time that I've failed. But I can think of a million examples, but one that comes to mind is that I played lacrosse for like 8 years when I was a kid / middle schooler. Maybe it was a little less time than that. Anyway, played lacrosse for a long time. Was literally awful. Like, if there is any way to fail in lacrosse, I have done that and then some. Okay. And I really felt down about it, but I also didn't really like playing lacrosse. Like, it wasn't really something I would have like chosen for myself. My parents wanted me to play a sport, which is all well and good, but I was committed to lacrosse, and like looking back, I'm like, that didn't matter in the slightest in the grand scheme of my life. No. But I was so hard on myself for being a shit lacrosse player when I was 12, you know, like, and I think that as I've grown up, I think you have to recalibrate your own barometer of success versus failure and be able to say, this is something that's really important to me. I'm going to do everything I can not to fail. And you still might fail. So I think the second part of that is that you have to learn how to be nice to yourself and learn how to not take failure so deeply and personally that it totally like off-roads the rest of your life, you know?
Is there always something that you can learn from failure?
Honestly, yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm sure you could come up with a theoretical example that would transcend the rule, right? But I think as a general rule, yes, you can always learn something from failure.
So in that example, what did you learn about being a shit lacrosse player? As you say in your words, not mine.
No, I'll own that. I was a shit lacrosse player. I learned that lacrosse is not that important to me. I wasn't like willing to put in the work to actually be good at lacrosse because I didn't like playing lacrosse. I think I also learned that like succeeding in sports isn't the only way to succeed. I come from a big like sports family, and I feel like, you know, it's a little bit like butt of the joke, right? Like Quinn is bad at sports, which I am really bad at ball sports, like hand-eye coordination sports. You know what I'm great at? Rowing, running, sports where I just...
endurance sports.
Yeah, I'm athletic for a long period of time, right? But yeah, I think I learned a lot from that. And growing up, reflecting on that, I like wish that I could have talked to myself differently. Have you had experiences with failure where you feel like you've learned something from it?
I think that similar to you, the opportunities and failures where I have learned the most are the ones where I have used it as an opportunity to evaluate my values in the process. That, what you just said, really resonated with me.
Yeah.
I think because what I did next after the failure was ultimately determined by how invested I was and how important that goal was. Who set the goal? Was it actually important to me? And was I willing to put the time and energy into trying to you can't right the failure, but you can try and do it better next time.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah, that would be my answer.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I guess that kind of makes me think when you're talking about, how you react to a failure, like what happens next.
Mm-hmm.
How do you kind of know when a failure is telling you to keep going and when a failure is telling you to stop?
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
I think
It is the hard part.
I think the key to this is checking in with yourself along the way.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be self-reflective and aware as you're navigating failure, because if you continue to fail over and over again, that might seem like a reason to stop. And sometimes I think it is.
Sure.
But it could be the next time that you try something that you're ultimately successful.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would say this almost goes back to like the definition of insanity. Like if you keep doing the same thing over and over again,
right,
expecting a different result and continuing to fail, then that's probably a reason to stop. And maybe not stop pursuing a goal,
but maybe reevaluate how you're approaching that goal. And I think that's what you're saying, right? Like not doing the same thing over and over and over, but maybe doing that thing with a twist, right? You have to find a way to change what you're doing if you failed in order to better pursue that goal, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And one example I have of this is, I think it was last year that I was working on like a side entrepreneurial venture.
Yeah.
And it was never actually made it to market. I was like just working on this behind the scenes and ended up banging my head against a wall, for several months of trying to figure out the economics of how I could make this work. And ultimately I sliced it a million different ways. And I was just like, I don't think this is viable in its current form. And I feel okay. I don't feel great that I ultimately put that idea on the shelf, but I feel okay with that because I do think I did the idea justice and I took it far enough to vet it out and then realize that like in its current state, it's not ready. I also don't know if my like personal passion is quite there right now for this project. And I'm not willing to invest more time in this idea in its current form.
I think, Drew, you just like did kind of almost did like an exercise that I would encourage other people to do, right? So like Drew is talking about this idea that he had, which I know all about this idea, right? But this idea that you reflected on your values after you continued to fail, right? And fail seems like such a harsh word, right? But after this project continued to not go right? And you asked yourself some key questions. Is this important enough to me that I want to continue trying? I think that is like a hugely important question, right? What other things am I going to have to sacrifice if I do want to keep doing this? And in this situation, right, like maybe it could have been economically viable if we had put a bunch of our own money into it. So that kind of sacrifice, but also maybe this is only economically viable if I quit my job and devote my entire, work week to this, but I'm not getting paid at first, right? So there's like this economic aspect. There's also time spent with me and family and friends, right? So is it important to me? Am I willing to make the required sacrifices? But also like, have I just done enough? Like, have I reached a stopping point with it?
And I think in this particular example, I just learned that what I was working on was not important enough for me, based on all those questions that you just asked, to continue.
Yeah.
I didn't feel passionate enough or interested enough in it to make those sacrifices or continue investing time in it. I guess on paper, if the measure of success was getting this thing to market and making it real, then I failed. But I think it depends on the lens that you look through. And I think this is ultimately such an important concept when we talk about failure in general. It's all about the framing and your perspective.
100%.
If the measure of success was try out this idea and see how far you can get, then I succeeded.
100% succeeded, yeah.
Or it was, I haven't done this before, work on it and learn something new, then I also succeeded.
Yeah.
It just depends on the way. I mean, the podcast, I think, is a great example too, right? Like our measure of success has just been like, make it.
Yeah.
That was literally like the bar was, I like have this joke at work where we're like, the bar is so low, just don't trip over it. Right? Like we just had to get it out there. And that was our measure of success. And we have other goals with the podcast that like we want to continue moving forward. But I think sometimes if you have
Mm-hmm.
too big of expectations. You're just setting yourself up to fail rather than.
I mean, totally.
Yeah.
I really do agree with that. And I think that like you said, that the values aspect is such an important piece of it as you reframe, because what you're leaving behind when you fail and stop doing something, you're replacing with something else. And I think the example I would maybe use to illustrate this for myself is when I was in college, my senior year of college, I had run a bunch of half marathons and I was training for a marathon. And then I got mono. Um, so that obviously derailed my marathon training. So I've not run a marathon still. You know, as you guys maybe know, if you listen to this podcast often, Drew and I do run together. We are not even close to running a marathon. Is it something I would still like to do one day? Yes. Did I fail in that I tried to do it and didn't do it? Yeah, I did fail. But I succeeded in putting my value of like my overall health and wellness first.
Mm-hmm.
And I succeeded in not letting my like negative self-talk about needing to run and needing to exercise, I succeeded in not letting that win. So I think that this idea of reframing a failure is, in my mind, kind of the key part of how to change your personal narrative about failure into something kind of productive and optimistic even.
On that note, how do you make sure that failure doesn't influence your self-worth?
I mean, I think that's kind of the crux of it, right? Like, when you fail at something, you have to do some self-evaluation and self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And I say when you fail at something because everyone does and will. If you've not failed at something, like I'm sorry, I just don't believe you. What about you? Do you have any other thoughts on how you can keep your failure from impacting your self-worth?
I think you need to have other measures of self-worth besides just trying to achieve a goal.
Yeah, that's so true.
Right.
It's much more complicated than that.
I mean, like adhering to your values and living a value-driven life is probably, I mean, I guess if we get really meta with this, like, are you succeeding in following your values? Like,
right.
We can really like go
right.
down the rabbit hole. But life is made up of a lot of different parts. It's made up of 8 dimensions of wellness. Like, you are not any one single success or failure.
That is so true. Expect to see that on Instagram as a clip this week, everybody. But I also think that this is something that I think about a lot and talk about a lot. But I think that there's this fallacy, like a general fallacy. I would love to do a whole episode on this about black and white thinking, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have this dichotomy, and it's kind of like it's a false dichotomy. It's a false binary between success and failure, mm-hmm. right? Rather than it just being like check yes or check no. It's a range, right? Mm-hmm. It's a spectrum. So we've kind of talked about this before too, right? It's like, let's say you set out to run 20 miles and you ran 19 miles. Like, yeah, you didn't run 20 miles, so failure, I guess, but you did run 19 miles. So like, that's also so awesome.
Exactly.
So I think that that's part of it too, is that especially those goals when you feel like you really put a lot of yourself into it, but you didn't quite get there. I don't think that has to be like negative, like you suck, that's a failure, you know, like it can be like, I made a ton of progress.
Does fear of failure ever hold you back?
Oh my gosh, totally. It definitely does. I think it's scary to put yourself out there and to say like, this goal is important to me. That in and of itself, I think is vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that kind of one of the keys of living like a rich life is being vulnerable and like taking a risk. I think if you don't do either of those things, you're going to live a very limited life, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know, I know that fear of failure is something that you and I talk about a lot, like
it is
in terms of progress versus perfection as well.
Absolutely. I think it's so easy to resign yourself and never pursue anything because of the fear of failure.
Yeah.
But that results in a pretty boring and unfulfilling life.
Absolutely.
I think you have to recognize the failure or the fear of failure. I think you have to recognize the fear of failure, acknowledge it, and then move on.
Yeah. It's okay to sit with it for a minute and say like, this is scary. But I think you ultimately need to get to that place where you can say, this is scary, and I am brave and I can do hard things.
Mm-hmm. If you ultimately decide to not pursue something, I don't think it should be because of fear of failure.
Agreed.
That might be the thing that like initially sets off your warning signal. Mm-hmm. But I think fear of failure is really just another way of saying anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
right?
true. Yeah.
There might be a legitimate reason why you're afraid. If it's just about like not reaching your goal,
Right.
I don't think that's reason enough to not pursue something.
I agree with that. Maybe you think about it and you're like, I thought I wanted to do this, but it didn't really align with my values.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like a different story.
Yes. And I think that's a much healthier way of looking at or of evaluating a decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's so true, right? That fear of failure is just your anxiety talking. And you don't have to have an anxiety diagnosis to feel the feeling of anxiety, right? So because what you're doing is you're projecting into the future to say, I'm worried about what might happen. Yes. And that is anxiety in a nutshell, right?
Exactly.
But I think that like we can do hard things. It's worth taking a risk. There's a really good, I'm just thinking of this now, so I did not look it up, so I'm going to butcher this quote. But there's a really good quote that's kind of about like a love lost is better than never having a love at all, right? And I think that is kind of the same sentiment here. It's better to have tried and failed than to never try at all.
Yeah. Well,
that's a wrap, guys, because that was perfect.
That was an amazing soundbite. And on that, we're going to transition into rapid fire.
In case you couldn't hear, Drew, that was rapid fire.
Yes, I got a request for ASMR this week. So for our ASMR requesting fans, hopefully,
this one's for you.
Hopefully that did it. All right. Question 1.
Okay.
What is one word to describe your relationship with failure right now?
Welcoming. I welcome it. Like, bring it on. And I'm excited to put myself, like, if I'm in a position where I might fail, that's kind of awesome because I'm challenging myself to do something hard.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like so like toxic positivity almost, but I really do believe that. I think like I welcome feeling that fear of failure because I think it means that I'm pushing myself and I'm challenging myself.
Love.
Booyah. I can't believe I just said that.
All right. Question 2. Who is the first person that you call when you fail at something?
You, obviously.
Yay.
You're the first person I call when I have a good day or a bad day or like something boring happens or like I go to Starbucks and I'm bored. So.
And I love picking up that call.
Yeah. Okay, my turn for rapid fire. All right, Drew, get ready.
Okay.
Give us some failure advice summarized in one sentence.
Are you saying that you failed? Or is someone else saying that you failed?
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, that's so true. Is it coming from within or without? Outside.
Next question.
What's a fail that keeps you up at night? It can be big or small.
I have talked about this a little bit on the podcast before, but I hesitate to say failure even with this because I'm like, I wish that I would have invested a little bit earlier when I, in my 20s.
Yeah.
But I can't undo that. It keeps me up at night sometimes and I beat myself up about it sometimes still. But it is what it is. And you just kind of need to move on and use it as a learning moment.
Totally. I think also like that brings up another good point that we, I think, have touched on, but not really dove into before. Which is just that like, yes, you will fail in life, but dwelling on it is not the thing that is gonna, dwell on it and think about what lesson you learned, but don't dwell on it and get yourself down.
I'm gonna probably misuse a term that my therapist has introduced, which is radical acceptance.
Okay.
Which is like when something is like completely out of your control, there's really no solution other than radical acceptance.
Yeah.
Like if you can do absolutely nothing, and in this case, this is true, I can't go back in time and change the decision that I made. I can change my behavior moving forward, but I have to radically accept that that's outside of my control and I'm never going to be able to do it. So dwelling on it isn't going to do me any good.
I kind of love that, right? This idea that like you don't have to be down on yourself for stuff that you have done in the past, right? Like move forward, take the next step, make a change and be better. And that's in your control.
Boom. End of podcast. Just kidding. We're going to the weekly recap next. All right.
Well, we talked about failure. I guess this is our opportunity to talk about some successes overall this week.
I have some failures this week. So.
Oh, okay. Our successes and failures. All right. So we always start with the physical dimension.
We do.
Drew, go ahead.
Physical dimension, I continued with running training.
Same here. And I did a run while I was in Boston. I went on a trip. You're going to hear about this more in the next few dimensions. I went on a trip to Boston. I also ran there, which I was really proud of myself for. I definitely get in vacation mode sometimes if I'm traveling and don't work out, but it felt really good to do.
Yeah, similar to that. I think this was the first time since we started running that I ran without you, which was challenging. Right. And also it was really cold. You also had the same experience. And I think it would have been very easy for me to just not put on the shoes and just sit on the couch.
Yes. But we didn't. We got out there. We got in some miles.
Very fair. Yes. All right. Our next is emotional.
I went to therapy. Small thing, standing appointment. But you know what? I did it and I showed up for myself.
Nice.
How about you?
We put Poppy in doggy daycare.
Ooh, I love that that's your emotional one.
Yeah. Honestly, she's been causing me so much emotional distress that I'm really, really happy that we did that. Yeah. And it's not fully solving all of her behavioral issues,
no, of course not.
But I think it's one thing that we can do to take back a little bit of control of our day.
And also she loves it.
Yes, she does love it.
She has a blast there. So I was so nervous when we sent her. This is how you know what kind of parent I'll be, right? You can watch her on a webcam at doggy daycare. And so we dropped her off. I was like, oh my gosh, I miss her. As normally she would be at home and I would be like, Poppy, what are you doing? Stop eating the rug. Don't do that. She'd be driving me crazy, but I missed her so much when she was at doggy daycare. So I airplayed the webcam of doggy daycare onto the TV. It was awesome.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Yeah. I like that was your emotional one.
Yes. Our next is social.
In my social dimension, I, again, was in Boston. I had lunch with my sisters, 2 of my sisters. I have 4 sisters. So I had lunch with 2 of them. And then I also talked on the phone with my friend Caroline.
That's so nice.
It was 2 really renewing social things.
Yeah, I love that you had one in person and then one virtual or pseudo virtual.
Yeah, it was a good balance this week.
Yeah.
What about you?
I had dinner with my family for my mom's birthday, which my mom's birthday has been a multi-day celebration just because of misaligned schedules and people traveling. So you were not there because you were traveling.
Right.
My brother-in-law was also not there. So this was just my sister, my parents, and our nieces and nephew. Yeah. And it was just some nice family time.
You had some great baby time.
I did. I really enjoyed that.
Our nieces and nephew are toddlers.
Yes.
And they're just so perfect and cute. And I'm kind of jealous that you
some great FaceTimes with you too.
Yeah. Of course. What about your intellectual dimension?
Okay. So I have 2 things for my intellectual dimension.
Wow. Okay.
Which I alluded to last week. But the first is that I finished listening to the audiobook of The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. Yes. Sorry, I knew it was Virginia. I couldn't remember Evans. This is my favorite book that I have read in at least a year.
That's really a great review.
Yeah. I highly recommend it. I also can't speak to the reading experience of it, but I can 100% with confidence say the audiobook is awesome.
Okay.
The actors are fantastic. And it's just so well constructed. And
it's epistolary, right? It's letters.
It is. You have also read this book, which I'm not going to spoil your intellectual.
Mine is for next.
Yes. So we've had the opportunity to debrief on this after both having finished it, but I absolutely love this book. And then the second is that I finished another book, which
so impressed.
This was the first time I've read on a Kindle, actually.
Yeah, which was a Christmas present.
This was a Christmas present. If you can see this, it's Theo of Golden by Alan Levy. A nice feel-good story.
Yeah.
This is on your reading list as well.
It's definitely on my TBR because it seemed like you liked it. Wait, give us your TikTok review.
Okay. For Theo of Golden?
Yeah, for Theo.
Theo of Golden, I think, is a nice warm blanket on a cold day.
Aw, that's really cute.
I really love the premise of building a community of people who at one time were strangers and now become friends. And it's just very beautifully woven together. And I love the fact that these different characters kind of there is already a semblance of community, but someone coming in as an outsider and then kind of weaving themselves in and forming these relationships is just something that it feels really good to read, and also is something that just makes me want to emulate in my own life.
Okay, I want to read that more than ever now.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
So those are my intellectual. What about you?
My intellectual was I also read a book, and it was The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkauf. It is for a new book club that I've joined that's like local to our area in Maryland, and I'm really excited about the book club. This book was good. I would not say it was like one of my number one books or my top books. I think I'm just maybe not as much of a like thriller / mystery reader.
Yeah.
It's just like not as much my genre, but it was nice to like mix it up from my usual reading material.
Yeah. Our next is creative.
Ooh, so in the creative dimension, I had made some good recipes this week where, as Drew has said, we've been more on like a homemade cooking grind. We're making an effort to eat in more and less like DoorDash / takeout. So I made bean and cheese burritos, which, okay, I will link the recipe in the show notes, because these bean and cheese burritos, okay, this is like, I really like refried beans, which I totally get that some people don't. If that is yucky to you, just mind your own business and don't make this recipe. But I like refried beans. They normally have a bunch of like animal fats and kind of like weird stuff in them. Drew is vegetarian, so Drew does not eat regular refried beans. So I found this recipe that involves vegetarian, actually they're vegan refried beans, and they were delicious. So like, even if you don't feel like making bean and cheese burritos, or you want to do like a fully vegan twist, the beans from this recipe alone slap so hard. I'm so enthusiastic about this. They're so good. I also made pea stew, which sounds gross, but it was also good.
It was very good.
Yeah.
That was a nice surprise.
Yeah, it was. What was your creative dimension?
My creative dimension was also cooking. I had one new recipe that I had cooked this week. I believe that it was our red lentil soup.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yes, which was good. I would give that like a 4 out of 5.
Honestly, I like that. I would totally make that again.
Yeah. We'll revisit and I might regrade.
Okay.
What about the financial dimension?
I made a payment on my credit card.
Nice.
I have like a small balance on my credit card. I'm paying it down, and it's part of my like financial wellness plan. But I also just like to like shout that out, because I think there's some stigma and shame around carrying a balance on your credit card. And is it awesome for my financial health to have one? No, but I also think it is very normal. So if you're also in that situation, like, you're not alone. We're working on it together, and keeping it a secret is not helping you.
Yeah.
What about you?
This is one dimension as well as occupational, where I did not really do anything, and this has been a trend, so I really need to get on that. Acknowledging my failure.
But you know what? What's the lesson in it?
Don't fail.
No.
No, the lesson is that I need to put a little bit more time into this and being more intentional.
Yeah, which is so true, right?
I think that like often these are the harder tasks, and I have we record this a week in advance. So for the coming week, I do have a financial one that I can speak to, but like,
okay.
It requires kind of going out of my way to complete.
No, definitely. I do think the financial ones can be tough, and they also tend to be very like executive functioning kind of oriented tasks, which can definitely be a struggle for me, at least.
Yeah. What about you for occupational?
For my occupational dimension, I went to the TBR conference. This honestly links to a bunch of dimensions. Like, I felt like this kind of connected to my intellectual dimension, also my creative dimension. But it was basically a writing and publishing conference in Cambridge, Massachusetts, so like right next to Boston. It took place at Lesley University. It was so fantastic. I wrote a little bit about it in my newsletter, so I'll spare you like every single detail. But it was a great opportunity. There were a bunch of sessions throughout the day that were really like educational and interesting. I went to sessions about writing a query letter, researching agents, the state of AI in the world of writing. Fascinating stuff. And then I also got the chance to meet with 6 different agents, and a couple of them requested, that they want to read more of my novel, which is just super exciting. But across the board, I got fantastic feedback, and it was so helpful. And I really feel like it's great in the occupational dimension. It's helping me move toward my dream job, right? But it was also like creatively inspiring and intellectually challenging.
I'm so proud of you for this. It's so incredibly exciting to see you put yourself out there, and also to see your work so well received.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see how it goes from here. I'm excited to keep editing my novel and just make it even better with the feedback I've gotten, and also to put it out there, and hopefully I will be able to find someone to represent it.
Absolutely. And then our last is environmental.
Well, my environmental is, I put Poppy Goes to Doggy Day Camp for my environmental
Okay.
because it improved my home environment when she was not wreaking havoc during the workday.
Yeah. Mine was also Poppy related. I spent a lot of time outside while you were in Boston with her.
Yeah.
So we went on some super long walks, and even though it was cold, it was just a good opportunity to get out of the house.
I love that. We should really do an episode on Poppy.
Yeah, we should.
And like dog parent life.
Yes, we should.
So how are you feeling after this week 12?
I'm feeling pretty good. I think that like this might have been a week where I leaned more heavily into some dimensions rather than others. So I'd maybe like to balance that a little bit more. Yeah. But all in all, I'm feeling pretty good about it.
That's awesome.
How about you?
I feel like the TBR conference was such a big thing that like bled into all of my dimensions that I felt like that really lifted up a good chunk of my wellness. But it definitely also put me in a place where I was like, I need some rest and relaxation for the coming week. So I feel like it was really great to fill my cups, and it was also nice to kind of be able to come home after that trip and be like, just like take a deep breath, sit back and relax.
Yes, it was well deserved. Well, on that note, I think that's going to be a wrap. As always, feel free to follow us, like, share, comment wherever you listen to podcasts, or follow us on social media. We really appreciate it.
We'll see you next week. Have a good one.